It's good to really meet you in person.
Yes, absolutely.
I've read a bit about you.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Good.
How's it going, by the way?
Everything's good. Busy, very busy, but everything's good. Busy is good.
Yeah,
so,
busy is good.
Yeah.
Busy is better than idle.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so would you like to start by introducing yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. So my name is Henry Asenso, and thank you for having me. I'm founder of Kuro Africa. We help people make more informed decisions around real estate and business in Ghana using the power of data analytics and AI. That's what we do.
That's impressive. Okay, so I like to sort of start from the beginning. You've had a wonderful career journey, but if I were your buddy in high school, what would I think of you?
That's a good question. Hustler might be one word. I've always been interested in business, being a business owner, etc., without necessarily understanding what it actually meant or what it took.
Right.
My family are into kind of trade and have done a lot of business in Ghana. So I've always looked up to them, different family members. But ultimately, as a youngster, I was a bit of a troublemaker just because I was curious more so than anything. But I spent some time in Ghana. I went to Morning Star School for a while and had this renewed sense of importance around education and educational excellence, whereas growing up in London, that was completely the inverse. So that Ghana's been a really important part in my journey from being very young. And my connection to Ghana is what fostered the idea that came through to Kuro eventually.
Right.
So coming back and forth and learning different things. But I think kind of my high school friends would have probably said someone who's, likes to play sports, have fun, and compete. Right. I think that'd probably be what the description would be.
Would that identity still fit with who you are today? Would they be surprised, or are they surprised?
I think some would be surprised because the troublemaking aspect, maybe they didn't have too much expectation for me, but some others not. If you knew my kind of competitive nature, then maybe you'd be less surprised. Eventually. But I think I'm even surprised a little bit with myself in terms of what has manifested off the back of the work that I've done, because really, data analytics wasn't on my forefront of my mind entering my career period. Right. It's come about through kind of just inspiration and problem solving, and then just really following the gut feel and kind of God's call to really focus on the things that electrify me as an individual. So that's where it's come about.
But connecting the dots, last meeting we had, the inaugural edition of this webinar. Okay. We had Mrs. Georgina Fiagbenu from MTN, the corporate communications manager for MTN, and Erin Porsche. And we were talking, and one of the ethos of the conversation centered around connecting the dots, as you go along in your career. You might have had some useful foundational principles. Where did that come from? Because being a troublemaker, as every other young child, and then you go into a foreign culture like the UK, where the structures are a bit in terms of family unit and those cultural expectations and is a bit different from what we have over here. It might have been easy to, go to the extreme side of that troublemaking. So what was that anchor for you?
That's a really good question. So I think the anchor for me was when you're in the UK, I was born in the UK, and when you're growing up, you always had this threat of, if you misbehave, you'll go back. Right. And I was one of the few people actually got sent back. And in being sent back, I think my whole reality shifted, because I came from an environment where, when you're young, ultimately you're looking for attention. Yeah. And, 12, 13 years old, you just enter secondary school. You see all the badly behaved kids are getting the most attention, whether it be from adults, girls, whatever. You emulate that behavior. So me getting sent back, it just shifted my whole perception on what was important, because, school in the UK is free. It's tax paid, but it's free. Here, people were struggling to pay school fees. And, being the class clown was kind of celebrated in the UK. Whereas coming here, if you tell it a class, you're in trouble, right? So, and it's embarrassing, shameful. So it really shifted my whole perception on what was important, which gave me a grounding for competitiveness in a different dimension, which was schooling and education. I also knew that, you know, I think just being African, West African, you have this educational pressure anyway. So I think where it didn't work well for me is because I was still a bit of a troublemaker when I came back, but, you know, more just a nuisance. I was still intelligent, but, you know, there's this thing in UK, the system is based on predicted grades where you get your schooling and your college and things like that. So my predicted grades were lower than what I actually attained, but I still went to a good school and stuff like that. I think the real shift for me came in kind of adulthood, in where I went to, I started off in an Indian tech firm after I did an MBA. And the MBA exposed me to kind of varying levels of excellence from all over the globe, different forms, right? Some people were analytical, some people were creative, etc. So it made me realize, hold on, there's various ways you could do this. And then I entered into the consulting market, which is what I always wanted to get into. And after a couple of years, I joined Ernst & Young. And that was like real baptism of fire in terms of the level setting of professionalism, the expectations, timeliness, quality of output. And then I worked with some really inspirational people who just had this way of completing so many things, running concurrently all the time. And I realized that, you know, I found it hard to keep up with them. But I realized I took a sabbatical in 2019 because I got to a point where I was like, what do I want to do next? So I came to Ghana. I had 6 months. I had a list of ideas. I had no emotional attachment. And I said to myself, does this work or not? I used the kind of lean startup ideology. And in doing that, I remembered how some of those people who inspired me behaved. And they behaved in this way of kind of getting things done super quickly. And when I had the passion to and I was restricted on time, I realized I was emulating those kind of behaviors. And from there, it's kind of stuck. I know how to effectively prioritize. I read a lot. So I've taken on a lot of concepts around, you know, there's a book by Cal Newton, I think his name is, Deep Work. So being able to jump into really productive work for sustained periods of time. And it's actually my wife who helped me adapt it for my purpose. So I've got, at the time I had one kid, I've got 2 kids now. And I was explaining the concept of deep work to my wife and saying that, you know, Bill Gates takes 3 months off and he's in the mountains and he just focuses. And she said, you haven't got 3 months. You have to be able to turn it off and on at will because you've got kids running around, you've got me, you've got work, you've got what you want to do with your business. And that was when the light bulb switched. So that provides the structure for me to be able to execute well and be optimal as an individual.
You know, when you were talking, I was making some indexes. How old were you when you were sent back to Ghana?
11.
Okay.
Yeah, 11 through to about 13.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're married now, you have 2 kids.
Yeah.
So in terms of parenting, let's look at it in this direction. You know, when you are young, you kind of rebel against your, when you are very young, you idolize your parents. Then at that 11, 15, you rebel.
It's critical
and
point.
then now you understand what they are going through. So 100%. You idolize them. You make up for those mistakes that you think they made. So looking back, are there some of the lessons that you took from the way your parents managed your experiences in those periods that you're applying to your family right now?
Yeah, I think so. I think especially, you know, my parents, so I've got 2 siblings and my parents' plan was always for us to come and experience Ghana. Now, in practice, I was the only one. I mean, they came and experienced Ghana, but coming to school here, I was the only one. So, you know, not directly, but loosely, because that kind of cultural seed was planted with me, it's grown off my own volition, and now I want the same for my kids. Right. I'm here with my kids now. I don't intend to go anywhere. So
why?
Yeah. Why? Because the next century is Africa's. If you look at demography across the globe, aging populations in industrializations, the talent like you have here as well, and just the general feeling I get when I'm home working with my people. Everything on Kuro has been built by young Ghanaian guys here.
Right.
And in my initial stages, I went to what I thought would be the solution, which was India. And it didn't really work out. Some parts did. But when I decided consciously, I'm quite a patriot. So when I decided consciously, actually, I'm going to build my platform using local talent, that's when the quality of my output and work and platform just went. Yeah.
Yeah, that's understandable. You know, you talked about lean startup, and I took away from that principles, and then you talked about environment. So now you had your first integration into the cultural experience of Ghana at 11. Obviously, you would have had from your parents and you know relatives, but experiencing it firsthand at 11, and then you had to go back to college and you did some work. Now, what are some of those ethos that you took away from that, you know, that has impacted your work? You talked about
from my time in Ghana. Yeah, I think the main thing was just around educational competitiveness.
Right.
That was the main thing. It was like, you know, you're not here to mess around. Messing around is not cool.
Right.
You're here to represent your family. You have to honor your family. You have to honor their hard work. You know, friends will come and go. Your family stay there. So, you know, I really gained this sense of kind of patriotism, collaboration, wanting to do more in Ghana, as opposed to, you know, many people work forever in the UK and maybe their connection is lost or not so much there. And for me, that would be an absolute nightmare. I would not want that to happen to me in any shape or form. So that seed being planted actually made me, there was a period where, you know, the idea kind of became a bit faded because you get into the day-to-day of the West. And I didn't come to Ghana for 5 years, from 2010 to 2015. And when I flew in 2015, I was like, no, I cannot. I lost sight of what I'm supposed to be doing because the change that had happened, the development that had happened, and even from 2015 to now, again, it's exponential. So I think the main seed for me was just the importance of, you know, adding value to what we have, and the fact that, you know, I'm fortunate enough and blessed enough that I have somewhere else to go and try, you know. Some people don't have that. Some people are so far removed from where they originally come from that it's difficult for them to go back. And I think it's happening to us as Africans as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, we are at the crux now. We have, in my opinion, reached an inflection point on the continent. And in Ghana particularly, I should say, because we just had an election. How do you feel about the election, by the way?
Oh, I'm glad it was good. It was as smooth as it was.
Right.
I was very glad about that. You know, I think in a way, I'm quite stoic in philosophy. I don't concern myself with things I can't control.
Right.
And, you know, I didn't register to vote in time, so I didn't vote. So that would have been an aspect that I could control. But ultimately, what does it mean for me, my family, and my business? It didn't change from November or whatever the date was, from one day to the other. It didn't change. It still means that I have to build my business. I have to make sure my family are good. I think what's important is that governments provide the enabling environment to help people excel and thrive and succeed. And I think, you know, I look forward to this and future governments. I look forward to new ideas coming through from government officials that are more representative of the general population in terms of youth. And I look forward to those leadership in whatever shape or form realizing that actually, because we don't have so much of the historical bureaucracy, we can engage on technology way sooner than everybody else. We can adopt technology way quicker, and do so. And I just want whatever leadership is in place to enable African ingenuity, because it's an extremely powerful thing. It's not something that is anywhere else in the world. That ability to solve problems, think, survive, and evolve.
Would you say you're a hopeful person?
Yeah, I would say so.
What forms your hope for Ghana?
The youth, the talent, that ingenuity, which is, again, we should trademark it. There are aspects where you become less hopeful, but in general, from what I experienced and who I've dealt with here, I just think that, for example, I'll give you an example, like I don't know if I'll get in trouble for this, but in my day job, I find people less impressive than in my business world.
Right.
And because they are more talented, they come from a different, imagine, so again, it comes back to demography. Imagine the majority of people are, 40 and above in the UK. Whereas the majority of people here are under 18 and under the age of 18. So everybody who is under the age of 18 and has access to internet, et cetera, has actually evolved and grown with their completely digital kids, right? They know the social media platforms better than anybody else. If you have a computer science background, you have an advantage in AI and in machine learning and those kind of things. Whereas on the inverse in the UK, you can't really teach a dog new tricks, old dog new tricks. So they're looking for the next people to come up to help them understand what's about to happen. Whereas everybody here knows in some shape or form these technologies, they know code and all this kind of stuff. So for me, that's the biggest hope that I have for Ghana, is the quality and talent. And because we have that educational culture, educational excellence culture, it means that we are just churning out really high potential people all the time. So that's what I'd say.
Which also brings, well, I like the fact that you say in some aspects, your hope is not reflective of existing situations, because you look at the numbers and data and they say 60% of young Ghanaians would like to leave Ghana.
Yeah.
So
I get it. I understand it.
And we do feel their frustration in both the education system, the government, and the corporate institutions. There are some numbers that say 90% of young Ghanaians that leave university today cannot find job that is meaningful for them in 6 years. So
that's crazy.
Some even say 10 years. So now you pair these side by side and you're wondering, do we still have something to be hopeful for? What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I think we do. There are pockets of innovation. I think some of the diaspora have played a key role in helping some individuals find work.
Right.
There are organizations that are into knowledge process outsourcing, business process outsourcing, where, all right, they can't employ everyone, but they've made significant steps. Hundreds of people are doing work for Western companies, those kind of things. And if you think about it, India in the 80s and 70s were at a similar point where they had highly skilled, lower cost labor sitting there without work. And then you had organizations come in and set up the infrastructure to industrialize that knowledge power. And some of these companies are now 250,000 employees. And then there's seven or eight of them competing for the same work. I see no reason why that can't be done here. And in fact, I see the seeds of that beginning here. So, I get the historical context. I get where we have come from. I get why people would want to leave. But I think there's also I think we're in a little bit more of a different situation than comparatively to, say, maybe a Nigeria, where some pockets of the Ghanaian youth are actually saying, well, if I can earn USD and stay here, why would I leave? right? So quality of life wise, some of my team members are the same, right? And quality of life wise, like, well, as long as I can earn USD, why would I go to the US and be a small cog in something, or I could be here and actually problem solve,
right?
We're forward thinkers. So yeah, I think it's a balance.
This is what you've explained is the reason why I'm in business. We are in business to support the talent that will power organizations like yours.
Amazing.
And we talked to some of our friends that, came from the West. And the problem is there are two things that we hear. One is, I don't want to come and start from scratch. I want some frameworks existing. And the other people would like to have everything, ready.
In regards to what?
Well, in regards to the environment, supporting entrepreneurial impulses of companies, in regards to policies that favor businesses. So I was going to ask you, you came in with an outsider's eye, so to say. What did you notice when you came immediately, and how did that shape your business taking roots? Because it seems like you have an easy integration into the environment. What happened? What was your secret?
To making the integration easier, or identifying the business route? Which one?
Okay, so maybe both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for identifying the business route, it was ultimately solving a problem that I experienced.
Okay.
And the problem was I was wanting to invest and struggling with the lack of transparency around investing in Ghana, especially on real estate. And a lot of things were anecdotal stories. I'd come one year, East Legon Hills, okay, a plot would be 20K. You come the next year, it's 30K, next year, 40K, based on what? And, I'm very aware of this, the market or the selling culture in Ghana of, well, let me see how much I think you can afford, right? And so that pain point led me to understand that actually I've seen solutions outside that help alleviate this pain. Let me try and build it. And that's where kind of the whole idea for Kuro came from. Yeah. In terms of my kind of cultural integration, what made it easier is, from that time when I told you 2015 up until now, I came to Ghana at least once a year, sometimes twice.
Right.
And it wasn't, I stopped partying in 2015. No, 2018. That's when I stopped partying.
Why?
I was here because there was no use for me. It got to a point where it was just
it family, or was it just personal principles?
It was just like, so when I came in 2018,
right,
and I came for a period of 5 weeks, and I was like, well, I see myself living here,
right? So
I can't live here like I'm on holiday. I need to live here like I live here,
right? And
I need to figure out what I'm going to do to be here. So I just didn't have any interest, and I'd done it for so long over the years, back in the day. And I just said, no, it's not for me. So when Year of Return happened, I remember I was here. I didn't go out once. I was just working through these ideas of, is this going to work? Is this going to work? I was focusing on it because in my mind, I was taking this sabbatical thinking that I was going to move from that point.
Right.
But life happens, and you change, but that all happened for the right reason. So I think the constant preparation, speaking to elders, speaking to the youth as well, understanding what was happening, helped me transition easier and know what to do and how to navigate, I'd say.
That's impressive. Do you know Strive Masiwa?
No, I've heard the name.
Yeah. The founder of Econet Wireless. He's Zimbabwean, but he lived in the UK. He writes these posts on Facebook and, his social media platforms, and he's giving advice to African entrepreneurs and wherever they are, So there are some fragments of thought that I picked from his post, somewhere around 2020, thereabout. He was talking to that, diaspora youths that want to invest in Africa. And when you were talking, I remember some of the things that he said in that post. Be clear about your motive. It seems you were very crystal clear about what you want to do, and it shaped your interaction with the continent. There are many, many, many people who have invested in the continent with good intention, maybe gave their brother some money, and they came home. There is this trending post. Do you see it on Twitter? The guy was giving his wife money to build a house for him. And the wife kept sending pictures of nice houses, development stages. Eventually, the man came home hoping to enter a very good house. And he came to meet some shanky blocks of structure that hasn't even gone anywhere. So he was so frustrated. And there are many stories like that all over the continent.
I've heard some really interesting ones.
So it's good that you said, you didn't interact with Ghana as someone who came to have a lifestyle.
No.
You knew you were going to live here. So you were intentional from the very first moment that you came in. So this also brings another one. For those who are looking to invest from there to here, how have you advised them to shape their process and make that connection better?
Yeah, I get those kind of questions a lot because naturally, because my platform has so much information, a lot of questions emanate from that. And my number one thing would be to come and research. It's no different. If you're going to move to Bulgaria, you wouldn't just up and leave and start investing. You'd have to understand the landscape in detail and also try and create value. One thing I didn't want to do, and you're talking about being intentional, I didn't want to come here and then start asking for favors or, to get into a job or anything. I wanted to come here ready with value to add. So, even if my business wasn't a commercial success, it would still enable me to network with that value and build connections and understand what's happening on the ground. So I'd say if somebody's looking to invest, don't do it thinking you can sit there. I mean, everyone should know that you can't do that. If you're going to have some degree of distance, which I had to be in the UK because at the point that I finished my sabbatical, I found out we were having our first child. So, plans changed. But I used that time to build the platform. So effectively, I spent time daily in the UK understanding all the different areas, all the different pricing. So all of a sudden I had all this information, but I was able to gather that from sitting outside. So, if you have to be outside, then come regularly. When you come, be disciplined, know what you're here to do, have your checklist, make sure you check through it. Because every time you come, it will be an increased learning curve. And, you have to be diligent. You don't go with the feeling of something or the excitement. Literally look, is there a market for this? Are people telling me this is a problem? I listen to everyone. On the way here, the taxi driver who dropped me off, he was like, oh, I hope some company has an idea around cooling mobiles for drivers, because when I'm driving around, it gets hot and then blah, blah, blah. And I was asking him questions. I was like, that's a pain point. And he was like, there's 1,000 Bolt drivers. I don't know how many for Yango and Uber. And, from a lot of my business learning and business understanding, as long as you have those 1,000 people that would pay, even if it's $2, right? You've got $2,000 a month coming in, solving a problem. So if you look to invest here, look to solve a problem or to provide a service to the vast majority of the population. If you provide a service to a niche, then fine, but they must be prepared to pay a premium. But, people come here and trade all sorts of things and do really, really well.
Yeah. There's this research that was done by a certain organization. I was trying to locate it. Capacity to pay has been one of the roadblocks for companies, trying to get into African markets, of which Ghana is part of. We have this freemium culture. What did you notice when you came in?
So freemium caution in terms of?
People usually don't like paying for things.
Yep, I know that well.
Also, I think the research, if I get it, I will show it to you. It says also the ability to really pay, those that want to pay. Some of them, now talking about the youth, I know that's not your primary audience, but some of them don't have the money to actually pay for the things they want to buy. So you had sort of outside insights before you came in, because you've worked in different cultures. What did you notice in terms of capacity to pay?
This is a really interesting question. So when I was building Kuro, I thought that naturally the kind of core customer base would be Ghanaians working in the real estate industry here who wanted to get an edge and advise with data. And also I knew it would be diasporans who were further away and wanted to research. But I was completely wrong on the former, because the capacity to pay on the Ghanaians working in the system, and maybe even just the culture around real estate, right, is in a way, the lack of transparency is beneficial to some of the players here, right? So if Mr. Smith or Adjoa in the UK is looking at investing, and then she sees these ads and says, oh, okay, I can get this for this, it's really cheap, blah, 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 or it looks really cheap, and then they hand over their money, and then whatever happens, or they overprice and give a story about how much returns and all of this kind of stuff, but you have no conversation around occupancy rates. Somebody may buy that 1-bedroom apartment in Laboni for $200,000, thinking they're going to earn $3,000 a month, but only get $3,000 a year because it only happens at Christmas, right? So in terms of the capacity to pay, I did see that in some of the local audiences, if they weren't, I'm a part of a lot of like discussion forums and WhatsApp groups, and sometimes I share my stuff, and you get the cultural kind of, oh, but who cares about data? People will sell for whatever they want to sell for. I get that kind of pushback. But when you really do interrogate it, sometimes they come to the side and send you a private message. No, I agree with what you're doing, and blah, blah, blah. So there's cultural stuff. And I think capacity to pay is an economic and both economic and a cultural
index,
because economically, you may not be able to pay, but culturally, you may not feel like you want to pay or you need to pay for information. Whereas culturally in the West, they pay big money for information. So it's an interesting one. I think it's a combination of cultural and economical factors when it comes to capacity to pay.
Hi, my name is Kezia Omoye Owusankuma, a gallery associate, an art practitioner, a social media marketer, and a PhD candidate at the Department of Painting and Sculpture, KNUST. I've been in the art and media industry for 12 years, and I developed interest in digital marketing. The Ready4Work platform provided an opportunity for me to develop new and advanced skill sets. I learned to believe in myself, and I learned how to use design thinking to drive innovation. I developed essential social media marketing skills to drive sales, enhance audience engagement, and build a community around a brand. Ready4Work has helped me develop confidence in my job search and has given me a lot of job opportunities. If you are looking for a job, you want to develop a new set of skills, you want to complement your degree, I recommend Ready4Work Digital Career Accelerator.
Do you see it, because most times when we talk about entrepreneurship, and obviously you know this, you've probably discussed it in some of your forums. In terms of the different players that make up the entrepreneurship ecosystem, you have the government who provides the regulations and stimulates entrepreneurial, catalyze entrepreneurship in the ecosystem. You have the funders who provide money, which could be institutional or private sector, and agencies in between. You have education sector, which comprises of the universities, the hubs, accelerators, and alternative systems like SFAN. Now you have the entrepreneurs, and now it doesn't end, of course, because we need the media to celebrate success stories and throw light into the ecosystem. So do you think that capacity to pay for services can be boosted by, not really capacity, the ability, I'm trying to choose the word, but what role does the media have to play in that space of changing mindset of people to be able to pay for services that they need and want?
I think if they truly need it, they'll pay for it.
Right.
I don't think media necessarily has a role to play, okay, it's good to celebrate success. But fundamentally, the way I see business is if you solve a fundamental problem and need,
Right.
and sometimes people, okay, good question. Sometimes people are problem aware,
Right.
but not solution aware.
Right.
Maybe the media plays a role in helping with the solution awareness, but given the democratization of media in today's world, it's something really the business should own in getting them solution aware.
Right.
There's so many ways in which you can specifically target groups through digital marketing these days that you should, and as long as your content copy is good, you should be able to make people solution aware.
So that media could be the business side of educating people about the solution they have.
Yeah.
And positioning themselves in a way that makes it appealing for people to pay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going through that exact process right now.
Right.
Of understanding marketing channels, refining my messaging to land
Right.
quickly. And so I've got, a whole library of hooks that are targeted towards the pain points
Right.
that I'm trying to solve.
Right.
And I need to take those into the right platforms where my customers sit,
Right.
and then target those customers and pay for ads and all those kind of things. That's probably my steepest learning curve so far, because I'm not a social media person. I actually don't like social media.
Right.
So, but I now understand its importance, and I've become to appreciate and actually like it. So that's something I'm going through now. So I think traditional media plays a different role, and I think it plays a less significant role because of the tools available to people in today's world.
Right.
In terms of, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, YouTube ads. There are billions of people on these platforms, and if you can find, 1,000 people that feel that pain and prepared to pay, even if it's $10 a month, that's $10,000 a month.
Right.
Right. So I think the media space is important, and I think it's completely shifted, and it'll probably shift again with the advent of AI.
Yeah.
Where are they going to position things like ads?
Right.
Are they going to start introducing those things? You need to be abreast of what could be coming down the pipeline, I think.
Yeah, there are so many points that you made in your conversation, in your submission right now that, it could be another topic on its own.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Because educating the stakeholder, enlightening prospective audience, changing culture, mindset, positioning the product offering is a huge work on its own. And as much as I do that the per mile cost of advertisement on these platforms are constantly going up. It will even be different in 2025 with what AI is doing now. Platform owners are beginning to change their rules and dynamics. So the war for the attention of the consumer is on a different dimension right now. So companies, startups exactly. Now, the struggle is how do you get, your offering to be seen in the sea of these distracted human personalities. So, I really hope that we'll get to talk about it more, but let's get into the real conversation of today.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I was doing some reading about the points of what the new president said he would do when he comes up. Would you want to share that on the screen? Let's see.
Okay.
I'll put that on the screen. Some of the implementations, his manifesto basically has 22 points of what he wants to do in the new year.
I was looking at the same thing the other day.
You were looking at it? So the first, obviously, is the fiscal policy, which I think will be on everybody's mind, the 24-hour economy. How do you think this will play?
It's interesting.
Because you obviously came from a 24-hour economy, so to say. So how do you think that will play in our cultural index?
It's difficult for me to say because I'm not so au fait with kind of labor trends and things like that. I think it has a good intention, but 24-hour economy for which industries, right? To do which kinds of jobs. You know, I get 24-hour economies for manufacturing, but we aren't great with semi-processing and manufacturing anyway. We import too much. So how does that, I have a question around this, how does that manifest itself and into what industries and markets? Because it's great, 3 8-hour shifts all year round, whatever, but in which sectors of the economy? I don't know what.
If you were to advise him, what would you say? Because I suppose, you know, this conversation will go online and probably he might see it if you
I'll probably take
his
it out
constituency, you know, somebody in his team might see it and I'll be like, Mr. President, this guy is talking sense. You need to get him in the room.
No, I just think, but you need to be clear on where the benefit is most realized when it comes to this kind of concept. But are there some fundamentals in place to enable you to do it? So I would immediately, just probably cognitive bias, would go to maybe agriculture and farming. Because we could produce so much. We have so much arable land on the continent in general. But do we have the technology to make the yield exponential? Are we doing things like vertical farming consistently? You know, everything from irrigation systems, all those kind of stuff. Where are we comparable to somewhere like Thailand, who is the world's, I think Thailand is the world's biggest exporter of cassava. Yet Nigeria has the most cassava. Ghana has cassava everywhere, but it's because of the technological and also the strategic infrastructure around logistics that makes Thailand a winner. So do we have the building blocks that enable us to run it 24 hours is my question. And, you know, things like power and, you know, transportation, roads, that all contributes to your ability to run that effectively. So, you know, is it about building those building blocks or those cornerstones first and then putting the 24-hour economy on top of it? I don't know, maybe. That's what I'd be thinking, because, you know, quite close to where I live, on the Legon City Mall, they call it 24-hour economy park, and it's like, they speak about it in terms of hours and that kind of thing, but I'm just like, but which industries? Where does it focus? I'm just not clear enough.
So the point is making niched, start from somewhere.
I think start from some, or be intentional about where you intend to do it, and what and why would you pick that sector. And there's a multitude of sectors, and I'm sure there's some sectors that are working, you know, 24 hours. I was speaking to someone at China Mall, and they run 2 shifts. It's not quite 24 hours, but they run 2 shifts. They run a morning and then they run a late. So if they added another one, you know, does that improve output? I don't know. Do they sell more if they add another shift? Or are they happy with what they sell with the 2 shifts they have? So what is the application is my biggest question around that policy.
Could businesses also help to facilitate that? Private businesses on their own accord? And if so, how could they tap into this policy and leverage government systems to facilitate their own 24 hours? Because I saw a post by one gentleman who said, he was, I think he's in the US, and he was passing by, he saw the gym around 1 a.m., full of people, active, and he was like, okay, see, this system could work actually in Ghana, where you have gyms in the night for people who are busy in the day.
100%. And in the UK, we have 24-hour gyms everywhere, right? But that works for them. Because actually the systems, the technology systems that are in play enable you to put in a code and you go in and you sign up and you have terms and conditions that says sometimes there's going to be nobody in there. You're on your own. Right. So it's not like they're employing people 24/7. They're probably employing people for 10 hours of the day, and the other 14, there's no one there. So, and you got to think about it as well. If I run a business and I run for 10 hours, me running a 24-hour business for the purpose of this economy means I have to pay someone
operational
for another 14 hours.
Right.
So actually I'm doubling my operational cost for what output? Are the sales 24 hours?
Right.
You know, that kind of thing. Right. So I just don't know enough for me to be clear on it.
Yeah. I'm following you on that. Monetary policy, exchange rate policy, and financial sector development. What do you see that could be feasible in that direction?
I'm not sure. I'm less of a finance guy, but I think obviously the exchange rate, has taken a battering.
Does it impact you? Because you talk to some people and they say, "Well, I actually like the exchange rate where it is."
Yeah,
now.
I mean, it does. It impacts everybody. I think if I'm earning external income, then yes, it favors me. But then when it drops, like it has recently, less so. But it's fine. It's still favorable. I think the underlying importation of goods would affect this big time. Right. Because if we, again, it's the foundations. If we keep importing stuff, which is based on the reserve currency, dollar, and we're hit with inflation in the US or whatever, that directly impacts us. So I think it's more about bringing the aspects of the supply chain that we criminally buy in and making them here. The assembly, the semi-processing of foods, that kind of stuff. Because tomato puree and all that kind of stuff, we're bringing it in from outside as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Insurance and pensions.
Again, I don't know too much on it. Yeah, I don't know too much on it to comment.
We have business development and entrepreneurship.
I think what they would benefit from doing in relation to entrepreneurship is promoting it by making it easy to set up, the administration of it. I don't like to do the UK comparisons, but we have to, right? Yeah. In the UK, it takes about 13 minutes to set up a business.
I was gonna actually mention some of those here.
Oh, right.
We did a report or research.
Nice.
About, some of the issues that entrepreneurs are facing in a growing economy like ours. And one of that is registration of businesses. So let me read you some data that we found out. Business registration from, by the way, the African Startup Investment Readiness Guide.
Okay, that's awesome.
We measured on 6 levers to improve your startup and increase investment readiness. And so what I'm reading now, the quote was taken from Tony Blair Institute, the report that they did. They said, business registration for startups in Africa takes far longer than in other parts of the world. In Australia, for example, the process requires two procedures that can be completed in just 2 days at a cost equivalent to 0.8% of the country's capita income. An entrepreneur in Djibouti, on the other hand, needs to go through 11 procedures that takes 37 days and costs the equivalent of 195% of the local per capita income from inception through completion. And when you bring the index to Ghana, it might seem close to what Djibouti is facing. Yeah,
I would say so. And then even in setting up a business here, I was told that when I wanted to set up my business here that, you need to set it up with someone. And I was like, why? Why do I need to set it up with somebody else? And I don't know whether the person was saying that you need a witness or whatever, but that was the language that was used. Right. So I think digitizing government operations is essential to moving the country forward, period.
Right.
All of these processes that are long-winded, I think they've made good steps in kind of passports and those kind of things. Yeah. But businesses, if you want to promote businesses, you need to enable the systems that enable the businesses. Can your bank accounts connect to accounting software? That kind of stuff. I think one thing that I've heard recently, which is really good, but I don't think it's anything to do with Mahama, is this whole concept of credit scoring coming in, which is really
helpful. It a good thing?
I think so.
Because some people, again, not speaking as authoritative on this subject, but I've watched some videos on social media. Somebody is saying, oh, in Nigeria, the system is so good. You know, maybe they came to Nigeria or they came to Ghana. You don't have credit score hovering over your head, preventing you from buying home just because you made one single mistake. And now we're entering credit scoring system. Do you think that's actually a good thing?
We have a problem with discipline in Africa.
Okay.
So we need discipline.
Right.
And so if you have accountability for making that mistake, you won't make that mistake continuously.
Right.
So for me, it's important because the reason why the acceleration, anyway, my opinion, the acceleration of progress in some of the other countries or Western countries is due to because they have effective credit systems.
Right.
So if you have effective credit systems that enable you to scale,
right,
your business, whatever business you're buying and selling stuff, and you can show evidence for how that works, and you get a credit score and you say, I want to scale up, lend me this, and you'll get this in return by this time. I think that's good for everyone. People will be able to buy homes, those kind of things. You know, the excuse that, oh, well, you know, you make one mistake and then it'll affect your credit. That's how credit scores work. And that's why.
Don't make that mistake.
Don't make that mistake.
Right.
And that's why, you know, when I'm in the UK, I'm conscious of, you know, if I want a mobile phone on a contract, don't go and call several providers because they're all doing a credit score and credit check and it affects your credit score. Those kind of things are just cognizant to you because of the culture of the system. So I think it's really important. I think it's important. I think it's really exciting to hear it. And I think that kind of thing, if done well, will grease the gears of the economy, because all of a sudden you're introducing credit, right? And also the other thing, like, if you have credit scores and they're effectively used, you could move away from this commitment of 12-month rent, 24-month rent, which shouldn't be the case anyway, because you'd actually have a reference point. But yeah, I think it's a good thing. But
another argument also from some individuals, credit score hasn't really facilitated, or should I say, lived up to the expectation of financial inclusion, because it makes people take debts, and it hasn't really helped to a great extent the countries that live on credit score. Somebody said, look at America. Even though you can buy a house, you know, with good credit standing and things like that, but you are taking on debts that, you know, you roll over to your next generation and things like that. What would your response be?
Yeah, it's a fair point, you know, it's a fair point. You know, there's a gift and a curse with the credit system, I think, because you're able to buy things that you can't necessarily pay for outright.
Right now,
but it gives you the option to do so. And it also gives you the option to leverage. So for example, a big reason that real estate prices are so crazy here is because it's not credit backed. People have already sunk their cost into it. And if they're waiting for $5,000 a month, they'll wait forever because they don't have somebody knocking at the door or a mortgage that underlines the asset that says you need to pay me $1,500 a month every month. Because if you had that, naturally your price, you'd have to reduce your price to attract the tenant to make sure you cover your costs.
Right.
So I think it brings more good in general. Obviously you need to cut your coat of salt into your side, right? There are trade-offs, but I think overall introducing credit to a system will enable businesses to scale. And I've seen it even kind of with family businesses and stuff like that, that, you know, they've leveraged credit in the West to build businesses in Ghana.
Yeah.
And so why not have the credit here? Yeah. You know, that's how I see it.
Now, the next is agriculture, which is one of your passions.
Kind of, yeah. Kind of. It's interesting for me, agriculture,
Yeah.
Look, I think from what I can see, the biggest investment in African startups is in agri-tech, right? By far. Because ultimately, the world needs food. They need different sources of food. And from my understanding, we are still in a traditional space. And there's opportunities there. You know, agri-tech, agriculture, agribusiness, focus on it, because the rest of the world are looking at us to say, what can we do to help you do this better? So I think that should definitely be a focus. And I think the technology aspect needs to be focused on. How do you generate more yield? How do we get, how do we partner with the organizations? Like, for example, I know the Dutch are incredible with agriculture, but they have they're like an island with rivers all through it, right? So what is it that they're doing? What can we learn? What can we leverage? Those kind of partnerships. That would be my opinion.
So there's been a growing conversation about GMOs. What do you think?
Genetically modified?
In agriculture.
I don't think I have enough information to comment.
Speak to it.
Yeah,
okay,
to be honest.
Fair enough. One of our stakeholders, a friend to the organization, he wrote an article he called "The Startup That Matters the Most in Africa is Agriculture."
Yeah.
Do you agree?
It seems like that's where the money's going.
Can you put that on the screen? Let's have a look.
It seems like that's where the money's going.
Right.
Because I see a few reports. I think there's a guy who presented at Tech in Ghana, shout out to Tech in Ghana, who kind of gave a breakdown of where the funds are going, and other reports, and it's primarily agritech is the biggest sector. Fintech, agritech, everything else is kind of
coming afterwards. Education should have been number one, though.
I think so. I think education should be up there.
Yeah.
100%. But I think that's more. I think the investment from outside tends to focus on more extractive industries.
Yeah. Kalman Lan is the social impact manager for Visa.
Oh, okay.
And he was go down. He was making the point to the fact that stop there. Agriculture is the future of work in Africa. This may seem counterintuitive, and to be sure, technology will play a critical role in ensuring that 12 million Africans entering the job market every year find their fulfillment along national, regional, continental, and global value chains. And this article actually went quite far. A lot of people said, oh, no, what he was saying wasn't quite accurate. But it seems to be living up to that prediction, don't you think?
I think that's a quite fair thing to say.
Yeah.
I do think general technology is going to be a big player in the future of work in Africa.
Yeah.
Just because of the way, as I say, again, the demography set up and the fact that we focus on STEM, we have this educational excellence culture. But agriculture, it's everywhere, and it's, we have the most arable land in the world. Why wouldn't it be the main? And we've done it for so many,
So when you came home, sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
When you came home and, you look at how we are producing massive cocoa at the time, and the average Ghanaian still cannot afford chocolates at the supermarkets. How did that make you feel?
I remember back in the day when we did this deal with Cadbury's years ago, and it was like $3 million. At the time, $3 million was like big money. I think that might have been about 25 years ago. And then you learn about the global chocolate market being billions and billions and billions. And, that's a part where the state needs to do better. Because if you are apportioning more of the value in the supply chain into the country, that means more people will benefit and be able to buy the chocolate.
Yeah.
So I think that's a major part of it. Is just that we seem to do bad deals. This recent lithium deal as well seems to be. We're supposed to be getting 10%.
Yeah.
And I watched. I've got to be careful what I say. I watched a video of the lithium company who won that deal, and the CEO was talking about this mine as our mine, as it belongs to them, and. I think that this needs to be a little bit more patriotism, a little bit more kind of Africa first or Ghana first dealings with people who have interests here. I think that's right. And I don't know why that isn't the case now, because there's incentives, but that needs to fix, and hopefully the the NDC government, just kick that off and maybe plant the seed for future governments to get better deals out of these things.
Yeah. In trade and industry, some reports say the diaspora contribution to the continent, or say to the country, the remittance, the inflow of money from our brothers and sisters abroad is quite more than FDI in terms of comparison. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So what do you think trade and industry policy can do to help facilitate diaspora contribution to Ghana?
I think we don't need any help for facilitating diaspora contribution.
Okay.
I think the technologies that have come in, the LEMFIs, tap sends, are making it really easy to facilitate that. I think from a trade and industry perspective, I think more mutual beneficial agreements coming into play, like, the Kenya agreement on talent into Germany is like a good example. I think Mahama referenced that recently. Because it's not only goods we trade, we could also trade skills. So I think there's a big opportunity in that space. And I think it's also trading skills inward. So how do we get that knowledge transfer from kind of experienced professionals in the West and diaspora in the West as well? Because ultimately the diaspora in the West, not typically, but there's a lot of really good examples of them progressing really well in Western systems and civilizations. Why not bring that knowledge back and enable people? That's like how I see things. That's what I'm here trying to do.
You own a platform and you generate, to your credit, enormous amount of data.
Yes.
How does that data help somebody who is looking at trade and industry and wants to connect with credible sources?
Well, this is the thing. So our platform harvests so many different types of data: real estate, population, infrastructure, and we're using machine learning and AI to predict where those trends are moving. And we've gone from descriptive analytics to a little bit of prescriptive, and we're moving into predictive. So our vision, or my vision, is to become the number one partner for individuals and organizations looking to invest, number one research partner.
Right.
So, and I think because the wave of interest is coming to Africa and to Ghana, especially in terms of just as an entry point, I want Kuro Analytics as an organization to be able to enable whatever organization to ask some really interesting questions about Ghana and Africa, and us be able to use data to answer it. Part of that vision is to visualize the whole continent as data, right? Be able to go to a source and be like, oh, let me look at Gabon today. What's the disposable income of the average Gabonese? I'd love to be able to create that, right? And we're starting with Ghana.
That's really impressive.
Right, I'd love to do that. That's the vision, right? And we're starting with Ghana to build that capability, and we're doing it with Ghanaians because ultimately they're going to understand the nuances that apply to the country. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in the knowledge space when it comes to trade and industry in Ghana. I was speaking to a relative recently and they were saying, they invested in some property and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, oh, I paid this for this. And I was like, oh, did you know that there's this opportunity here? Or these, have you looked at Agbogba as opposed to Laboni? Because Agbogba, you might get lower rent, but you would get higher occupancy. Oh, I never thought about that, blah, blah, blah. Let me show you the data. And so those conversations...
You're backed by credible data.
Yeah, exactly. And credible analysis.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the data that I'm showing you, it's the analysis. One of the features that we've recently implemented is a score called occupancy likelihood. So taking population, price, salaries, and being able to understand what's the likelihood of this being occupied all year round. What percentage occupancy can you expect? As a result, what is your adjusted yield? Because yield gets banded about just because, you get $2,000 a month. That's this yield if you buy it for this price. But you're not taking into account void periods, which is a very important part of the system here. So That's our objective.
To speak more words, tell us more about your company and what Kuro does.
Yeah, sure. So what Kuro has been doing for the last almost 5 years is collecting a lot of data around real estate, population, infrastructure, schools, attractions, and pulling it all into one place as a self-service platform. So you could go in and say, okay, type Sakumano. It will tell you what's Sakumano, maybe townhouses or apartments or house. You can pick your type and it'll tell you, okay, this is the minimum price, the median price, the average price, the max price. You have an interactive map to see what areas are around you, what's the comparable prices. You have comparable towns in there. So it will list, okay, within 30% of your budget, these are the towns that are in your district that you've selected, and these are the prices. So you could select different options. And because we've been collecting data for so long, we can now show you the historical trend where things are moving. And the reason why I added things like infrastructure and construction is because to make an informed decision, you need completeness, right? So if there is evidence of a Pokwasi interchange, the next Pokwasi interchange coming in 15 years' time, if you bought a plot of land in and around it and sat and waited, that would appreciate naturally because you're going to get greater connectivity and those kind of things. So that's what we do. We effectively harvest, clean, which is a big part of the data. It's cleaning it and model the data so that it becomes more insightful. We have AI, beta AI built in, so you can ask questions in natural language of the data and it will kind of co-verify, so ask you questions to verify what you're asking for. That's still in beta, so we're working on that still, but you can still access it now. So that's basically what Kuro does. And
how do you collect your data?
Publicly available information. So
third-party sourced, or you have contractors that go to the field too?
So we have a bit of both. So we have our contract resources out there collecting kind of like web-based data. Okay. And then also we rely on partnerships with different organizations to start.
Platform owners or renting agents or?
Renting agents, platforms, but also government organizations we're trying to get into. So roads and highways, can we get an understanding of what's coming, what's the proposed? And even there, they've got publicly available information around tenders, right? So you can start to understand what's coming. But we
what has been the difficulty? Because when we did this research, one of the things that we saw was access to data. Where is it? Access to data is one of the things that they say is missing. Government being able to build a data platform to inform activities like you are saying, and not just data, credible data, they said. So what has been the difficulty and how did you circumvent that? So I suppose in real estate it might be a bit different because Ghana's real estate system is quite robust.
No, I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree. So there's a lot of information out there and there's a lot that's not correct.
Okay.
That'll be either through manual error. You know, someone wants to list a property for sale and list it for rent, or people thinking that I'm going to get $100,000 a month for this property. I'm going to put it up, see what happens.
And it's been open and unoccupied for 3 years,
for 35 years. But you know, but what we do at Kuro is we process the data so that we remove that margin of error. So if there are massive outliers on the rental side, we normalize or we reassign them to sell, because that's surely a mistake. You're not going to be asking for $100,000 a month. And if you are, I'm not including you in the platform, because what's the reality of anyone being able to pay that? Who would pay $100,000 a month to rent a 3-bedroom house in East Legon? Doesn't make sense, right?
Just because in East Legon.
It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So there's that part. And we also do a lot of cleanup based on potential errors. So in a way, our processing kind of predicts the errors. So if, for example, someone lists as Oyarafa, but actually is meaning Pantai, we have the processes to check that and reassign. So yeah, the data quality issue was one that I knew from the very beginning would be the vast majority of our effort. And so then we have built automated processes around cleaning data to make sure it's as reliable as possible, removing duplicates, understanding that, you know, some business models are such that if you pay, you appear more.
Right.
All of those kind of things we have to take into account. So that's what we've had to do.
Did you build your system from scratch, or you leveraged existing frameworks to, you know, get to where you are?
So my original MVP was just me.
Okay.
And I built that whole thing on Microsoft Power BI.
Okay.
And because I understood it, but I'm glad that I did that, because then it gave me the language to speak to the developers, and they built it from scratch.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Now, I want to use your system. How do I engage?
Yeah, simple. KuroAfrica.com. Get started. Click the get started link. There's a free trial on all levels. So depending on quantity of data, it goes up in price. So our base plan just has property for rent, sale, and land for sale, and a price overview section, which gives you the distribution of prices, what prices occur most to your specific search. The level above that has the infrastructure and the trends information, and the demographics.
Right.
And then the level above that has market analysis. So this is where you enter a price. It will tell you, is this medium, low, high, based on our last quarter's collation of data. It will tell you against the populations, how does this compare in terms of affordability? How much of the population fall into that group? What kind of jobs do they do? And that tier also has our AI chatbot as well.
Right. So who do you really want to, like, who is your market, and why do they come to you?
So my market has been refined to be diasporans looking to invest or make the move,
right.
Or who are here looking to make another move,
right.
or, you know, savvy Ghanaians who want to kind of explore the market. That's how it's kind of morphed into.
Right. Why should they come to you?
Because you don't have an alternative
right now.
Yeah, you don't, fundamentally. There's no one in West Africa that does what Kuro does. You are able to go down into region, district, town, property type, number of bedrooms, price, and specifically search for that.
That's impressive.
And you would get your historical timeline, all of those things. You know, I got inspired by other platforms that did similar for other markets, and I knew there wasn't anything else here currently.
Right.
So, you know, that may change. But yeah.
Your market, you said, has been refined, and obviously that's a product of evolving dynamics.
Yes.
So for someone who is watching you right now and wants to do what you did, which is evolve and adapt as the process goes, what's the steps?
There's no steps. You just go with it.
You're reacting, or you expected that things might not be according to your proposition?
I think it's more responsive than reactive, right? So it's listening, learning, understanding, being open to change, and going with that. You know, I think when you are building any solution, you need to understand what the pain points of the customers are. So you need to explore that. I 100% agree that, but it's easier to understand the pain points if you've experienced them yourself.
Right.
That's what made it easy for me to do Kuro, because I'd be like, oh, well, I would want to know this, and I would like to know this.
Yeah.
I know there's at least 100 me's out there.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I'd say.
Did you do design thinking as a course in school?
No, I've come across it at work.
Right.
Yeah, I've come across it at work.
All right.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is design thinking, you know, wearing your users' shoe, understand how they feel in the context, and build to fit their need instead of your preconceived ideas. And that's what you are actually explaining to the user.
Yeah,
and to the listeners.
Yes, I agree. I don't think you necessarily need to be rigid to the framework of design thinking, but principally,
okay,
it's it's the right thing to do. It's just understanding, okay, I think business is about solving problems.
Right.
What problem is somebody experiencing? How many of those people are there experiencing this problem? And how well can you deliver a solution to that problem?
Right.
And let them know that the solution is there.
Yeah.
That's the critical part, because you can build a solution, no one knows it's there.
Absolutely. Communicating that value.
Yeah.
So now you have a paper promise and you've evolved your operational excellence to fit what the market is telling you. Who is winning? Are you winning or the market is still winning?
In what sense? In terms of...
because the market is always the final boss. So is there success? Are you being rewarded for listening or?
Yeah, no, there's success, and it's, success comes in various forms, right? So success to me,
success today?
Success looks to me like good feedback. Success looks to me like, somebody's tried it, done a free trial and cancelled. Success looks to me like, some of the people that tried it when I first did a launch on my MVP and still pay today. It's not huge monetary success, but it's huge monetary potential.
Right.
And
because you have feedback.
The feedback is there.
Absolutely.
And it's the solution aware piece that I need to work on. I know that.
Yeah.
Everybody is aware of the problem. Yeah. It's the solution awareness, like, actually this can help you.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I would say is, like, I'm not afraid to pivot because I know what my solution helps with, but it's helped me understand what else people need help with.
Right.
And that has shaped my ideas of what to pivot into. So that's important too.
Absolutely, yes. I agree. Henry, I really, really love our conversation. I think we'll have to do another one in the new year. Yeah.
Happy to. Yeah, absolutely. I've enjoyed it.
So, uncertainties. You come in, you set up a business, you love what you're doing, and you have people who you believe, love what you are giving them. But then you get smacked in the face, as every entrepreneur does. Yeah. When was that? How did you deal with it?
There's been different smacks in the face. There's been a few. I mean, some of the smacks in the face have been small ones that small slaps that dent your ego. So things when people are like, who cares about this, right? Why do I need to look at data? I'll do what I want. There's been people who just didn't get it, just didn't understand it. There's people that got it but didn't want to pay. All of those things, but it's part of the process, and all of those slaps in the face give you tougher skin. So you just stay on it. I suppose that's what I'm trying to do.
Did your family, i.e. your wife, did she play a role in giving you that focus and outputs?
Yeah, definitely. So my wife and I, our main, like when we first started talking and dating, our main connection point was our desire to be here.
Right.
So in our desire to be here, we both knew we needed to have income streams,
right?
Preferably that brought in less fluctuating currencies.
Right.
So, my wife does her business now. She trades, different things from Ghana to the West.
Right.
So we've been pushing each other.
And she's Ghanaian?
She's Ghanaian. She was born in Ghana, right. But came to the UK. So it sounds very British like me. But yeah, we're both Ghanaian, and we're both passionate about, our people and our progress.
Right.
So if our endeavors can enable someone to have a regular client who buys things from them that we go and sell, or if our endeavors enable me to hire 3 engineers in my team and a designer.
Why would you want to do this UX UI course? The reason is UI UX has been growing a lot, exponentially actually, in the last few years, and everybody's jumping into it. From finance, fintech companies, to energy companies, to basically a lot of sectors now. Why not jump into UI UX? And anybody can be a UX UI designer. Whether you're doing marketing, whether you're doing finance, whether you're doing education, anybody can just jump in and start learning about design. Once you take this course, which is Ready4Work's accelerator course, you learn about design, how to get started, fundamentals, and how to even get a job in UX UI design. Hi, my name is Joseph Abakuri, and I'm a UX designer for Kuro Africa. I've been designing for the past 6+ years now. I've been designing everything from fintech all the way to logistics. This is a perfect opportunity to start learning. The Ready4Work accelerator course is ready for you. Jump in and learn a lot.
We're doing something, right? We're actually actively working towards supporting people who are in the system.
Right.
And it's a win-win scenario for us and for them, you know. So we love to do that. That's what really electrifies us. So my wife has been pivotal.
I like that word electrification because that's what you need as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And the next 12 months is going to be electric, I should say. It will require some major electrification. And the reason being that, now, this is my private opinion, so I don't know if it would hold, but this is my thinking. I look into the future and I think that 2025 is going to be quite a unique year.
Yeah.
On the one hand, it's going to present distinct and unique challenges to everybody, but I think also is prime for massive opportunities. And so platforms are going to grow. Existing platforms are going to see massive boost because, of course, we need local success stories. The only thing I'm very concerned about, is how we can make that success story more pronounced and have the powers that be, to see the need to go in that direction. We need to have ownership of platforms that process our data. We need to have ownership of platforms that store, process, and transform what we eat into final commodities.
Yes,
we need to have ownership of platforms that manage our money and systems that make our currencies useful to the global economy.
Yeah.
We need to have ownership of systems and platforms that transform output of labor into, useful interventions for the global market as well. So, these are things that we see, we want to experience, and yes, electrification is required for entrepreneurs to build and project it to where it becomes relevant to everyone. From here to the rest of the world. So in your final comments, what would be your advice to entrepreneurs who are watching you and listening to you and want to tap into this electrification that we were talking about and outlast, because it's about outlast, outcompete, outimprove. What would you tell them?
I mean, if I can ask you one question as well, of the concerns that you list, what really is prominent in terms of, because you're speaking about the year and the opportunity, but you have some concerns. What is your most pressing concern?
To be biased, I think it's the human institution, because obviously I work in education and I see that education is the primal element in civilization growth.
Yes.
Without education, we might as well go back to the caves. So I think giving young people first hope and giving them substance to, transform their hope into maybe clothes that they can wear to become fashionable, or houses they will live in, because there are 5 things that we need in our modern society. We need to eat, we need to live in a house, we need education, we need an instrument to obtain and give, which is money. So if we are able to build these systems, then we can have bargaining power for the global participation that we're seeking for. So for me, I think it's helping young people understand how they stack up with the global market and giving them tools to elevate their position and have more bargaining power.
I agree with you. I think that's really important. And I actually think that's why I'm so bullish on Africa, because the education, those tools that center around the education and the skills and the competitiveness of individuals are becoming more and more democratized.
Right.
So, kids can jump on Coursera. All right, they need to have the means to pay.
Yeah.
But, if they can save up, if it's $60 for a course and they can do that course. But the key thing I think is the application, the ability to take the knowledge and apply it to a circumstance or situation.
Right.
And I think that's where, if you understand the skill sets that you need coming from outside or wherever, that's where you can really win. There are some organizations coming from outside and from Europe that are coming in and getting a lot of young people and training them up and giving them the necessary exposure. I try to do this at Kuro at a smaller scale as I am, by asking big questions of Kuro and then dreaming on from Kuro into other things that I want to do and saying, all right, let's try this. Let's think about how we would do this. And then this is actually adding to the experience repertoire of my guys that I've hired. Actually, I've done a machine learning model to predict population for the next 100 years for Ghana. I've done a machine learning model to predict house prices for the next 10 years in Ghana. That adds to their repertoire and that gives them more ammunition and armor in that regard. So to your question, the wrap-up question, I think anyone looking to delve into entrepreneurial world in Ghana or in Africa, I think there's two core ways you could do it. Is the one that I favor towards is to solve problems with technology. That's how I favor. But you could also come in and supply a demand. And that demand could be for biscuits, for water, for, semi-processed tomatoes. That would all be huge because this continent is only growing. And a lot of the other groups that have come into the space and come into the country have done exactly that. They've picked up a demand and they've delivered against it. We're used to being overpriced on things like this desk, right? Yeah. You'll go to Orca and they'll be like 6,000 cities, but you know what China will come and do? They'll come in and sell it to you 1,500, right? Yeah. So all of a sudden they've sold 10 and Orca have just sat there all day long. So if you're able to supply a demand, it's really helpful, and you could be extremely rich. You could be very, very lucrative of supplying the general population, or you could become very lucrative of solving a problem, or lucrative and influential from solving a problem. You could do the trade thing and be very quiet. You could solve a massive problem and be, very renowned for it. But I think ultimately you have to try. If you're in systems in the West, so I'll talk to maybe someone like myself, if you're in systems in the West, don't be in systems that are just eternal processes that you're completing. You're in a government organization and you've just done the same thing over and over again. If you're going to be in a government organization, figure out how they've innovated in there. See if that's transferable over here into the government organizations here. If you are problem solving in a particular market in the West, see if the same problems are here, or how do those problems adapt? I think, and I'm biased in saying this, but I do think the diaspora have a really important role, not in just sending remittances, but, remit some knowledge, remit some knowledge, remit some experience, remit some entrepreneurship, so that people have opportunities to work, because there's so many talented kids just looking for opportunities to work. You give them opportunities to work, they'll do their utmost for you. I've had talented kids come to me and offer to work for me for free. And I said, I can't do that. You have value. So I'm going to pay you. And it's worked out well. So, I think, look, I read a paper by a European country outlining their policy for Africa, and it was labeled Africa's Century, saying that we can't, as European nations, be missing out on what's happening in Africa. So if you're a diasporan sitting and just going day by day, enjoying your nights out on a Friday or a Thursday and not doing anything really in particular, but you're in an environment where innovation is happening, don't fall asleep. There's somewhere where you can do something else.
That's really impressive. That's impressive. Yeah, the decade that we are in is for Africa. How we capture that value, how we make it globally marketable is our responsibility. And I hope and I pray, that as we have these conversations and work together in synergy, in collaborative spirit of Africa to the rest of the world, I hope that we are able to really put the continent and the countries where they are supposed to be. But Henry, this has been really joyous.
My pleasure.
Stay tuned with us. The application is open right now for those who want to upskill, level up with useful materials that will help them to become part of the global workforce. Go to readyforwork.africa, readyforwork.africa, and apply to the open application for the tracks that you choose. So thank you very much for your audience and your attention and interest in our work. My name is Chris Emewulu, not Tom Cruise. He's the one in the movie. And we'll come your way again. Thank you. All the best. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.